Hey everyone, Ken's Wild here with Wild Child Horsemanship, and welcome to day number 9 of training Mustang Cherokee. First things first, you guys might notice how the scenery has changed. The herd and I have just relocated from Camp Verde, Arizona back to Ash Fork, Arizona. I decided that I'm going to try and pursue horse training as a career again. I did it prior to my accident, and now that it has been 2 years and I've had some time to recover and really work on my confidence, I decided I wanted to try and get back to it. We're starting today's session by doing some desensitizing to the lunge whip. I'm throwing it on and off of him. As you can see, he's unsure of it. He kind of takes that step towards me. However, this reaction is already loads better than it has been previously, as you guys have seen in past videos. He's kind of had those moments where he'll like try and bolt, or he'll like rear up and try and get away because he is so afraid of the lunge whip. So he's already doing phenomenal in that he's not as afraid of it as he has been before. He's a bit unsure about it touching his hind legs. He will pick up his hind legs when they go to touch it. However, he's not like freaking out or kicking at it or trying to bolt. So again, this is already significant progress from where we started. You also might notice that I do not have my treat pouch, and we are not using reinforcers. This is because my treat pouch is currently buried in a box somewhere. I have yet to unpack it, and so I figured this would be a good opportunity to try and work with Cherokee without some treats, work more on like negative reinforcement, and just continuing to show him that just because there are no treats added, that there's no reinforcers, doesn't necessarily mean that this isn't going to be a fun, positive experience. Going back to the prerequisites of starting a horse under saddle, we just worked on desensitizing. Now we're going to lateral flexion. So you can see here that I've got my hand over his withers. I'm standing at his shoulder and I'm applying a little bit of pressure. He is not giving to that pressure. He is walking away from me by spinning that butt. So I'm just going to essentially follow him as he spins, and I'm going to wait for him to stop and give his head to me. I have definitely broken this down for you guys in previous videos, so I'm going to speed this up a little bit for time purposes. A couple things I want to point out: that Cherokee has had a week and a half off while we moved, and horses thrive off of repetition and consistency. There are some horses who need a consistent work schedule in order to succeed, and so it's super important to be patient with your horse, especially after they've had some time off, because it's just like with humans. If we take a year off from doing algebra, it's going to take us a little bit longer to get back into the swing of doing algebra, and it's the exact same thing with horses. Secondly, Cherokee has just undergone a move. He's in a new place surrounded by new horses, and just a new environment altogether, and so this is another situation with horses that it's super important to be patient, because just like humans, it takes time for the horse to settle into their new surroundings as well. Next up, we're going to work on vertical flexion, and that is where you ask the horse to lower their head. So I'm going to crouch in front of him, apply some pressure on that lead rope, and when he lowers that head, I'm going to release that pressure. Now, I also want to point out that we have finally gotten an appointment scheduled with Cherokee so that he can get his teeth floated. So that is something we're going to be doing here in the coming weeks as well, because I am unsure the last time it was done, and I'm hoping that will help get some weight on him for sure. However, progress has been made, because this was him when I brought him home, and this is a picture from just a few days ago. Still not great, but I've also only really had him for like 2-3 weeks, so we're getting there. Next, we're going to move on to backing up. So I do have an audience with me today, which is why I'm kind of taking these breaks to talk. Right here, I'm going to start by leaning towards him and walking towards him as my cue to ask him to back up. As I go to do this, he does back up that step, so I release that pressure. The ultimate goal is for me to never have to increase pressure. Like right here, I have to lean towards him, shake that rope a little bit, and then give him a little extra pressure just to get him to back up. The goal is to get him so responsive to the point I just have to lean towards him to get there, but he is still learning. This is still something we're working on, so I just start with the least amount of pressure and increase as needed. Again, for time purposes, I'm going to speed this up a bit. Then we're going to move on to lunging. So again, in previous sessions, this has been something that we have struggled with doing on a lunge line, specifically because Cherokee has been nervous of the lunge whip. And so then when I use it to ask him to move forward and do things, that is where he has bolted in the past, or he's reared up and run off. So the goal is to try and just do this very slowly. As we've already seen, he's grown a little bit more comfortable with the lunge whip, which is a good thing. So I'm going to basically start working on lunging with him by breaking it down into little steps, right? So I'm going to point with my hand in the direction I want him to go. Apply just a little bit of pressure with that whip, and then the second he starts walking around me, I'm going to release that pressure. I'm going to do it again. He starts to walk around me, so I release that pressure. Ultimately, the goal is to get him to do more and more steps like he's doing right here. He's kind of pulling. He's not really having his head pretty loose, and he does stop, but ultimately he's starting to walk in that circle around me, which is what I'm looking for. Ultimately, when doing things like this, it just takes baby steps, right? It's my job as a trainer to make sure that he is understanding what I'm asking, even if that means breaking it down, right? Even if that means putting this into like 20 different steps like I was doing before. You'll see here that he's now starting to give me a walk around me. He does start to pick up into the trot, but he's at least walking around me, which is better than when we started. And so this again is the importance of breaking things down, because if I want him to understand everything I need him to do, he also has to understand all the components that go into it. Right here, I apply some pressure on that lead rope, lean towards him and ask him to stop. His foot does get caught on the lariat, but he does come up and stop. So I'm going to take a moment, take a breather, and then we're going to try and go the opposite direction. Here I go again. I point with my hand. I apply a little bit of pressure with that lunge whip just to try and get him to go. He takes those few steps, so I immediately release that pressure. He stops to look at me. I point again, apply some pressure, and then he goes yet again. Again, I just broke it down into baby steps for him to understand it a little better. Over time, I'm going to work on better send-offs and him coming in, as well as like speed, so walk, trot, cantering on cue. But for now, just the simple act of him walking in a circle around me is an accomplishment. Some other things you might notice is that his head is fairly low. He's giving me a nice relaxed walk. He is focusing on me with one ear, but he's not overly nervous or cautious. So this is all a sign that he is pretty comfortable with what we're doing. Right here, I'm going to step in front of him, look towards his butt, and ask him to come in, and he gives me his two eyes. So I'm going to take a moment, and I'm just going to give him some pets for that. Next up, we're going to work on hindquarter yield, which is where the hindquarter disengages and walks around the front end. So I'm going to walk towards his hip, swing that lead rope, and you'll see that he goes to take a step away from me with his butt, which is what I want. I want his front end to stay pretty stationary. Again, I ask him for another step, and he goes. Here we are, another step, and I'm going to release pressure after each and every step. Then I'm going to switch to the other side, and I'm going to repeat the exact same thing. It's important to remember that what you do to one side, you do to the other, and just repetition. I'm starting small and only asking for one step. Over time, I can increase and start asking for more steps. Right here, he's not wanting to move those hindquarters over, so I'm just going to pat his butt with it until he takes a step, which he does right here. So then I release that pressure, and I'm going to do it again and see if we can get more of a bigger step out of that. You'll see I eventually do get him to yield those hindquarters, however the front end also moves with it. I want to take this moment to remind you guys that sometimes you have to reward the try, right? Cherokee didn't quite give me the exact yield that I was looking for, however he did move his hind end, which is something he was struggling with. So I'm going to take a moment to release that pressure, let him think about what he did, and just reward that try. He gave it his best shot. It wasn't exactly what I was looking for, but I have to reward every step in the right direction, and that right there was a step in the right direction. Now I go to ask him to yield those hindquarters again, and this time he doesn't give me as much hesitation and he just yields them. So very proud of him for that. Next, we're going to work on yielding the forequarters, which is pretty much the exact same thing as yielding the hindquarters, but instead of the hind end, it's the front end. When I'm teaching a horse to yield the forequarters, what I'm going to do is throw that lead rope over their back. I'm going to apply some pressure on their shoulder, on their cheekbone, face them, and try to encourage them to sidestep with their front legs. You'll see here that Cherokee backs up. He's not really too sure about what I'm asking him to do. And so backing up is like his defense mechanism. He's just trying to tell me he has no idea what's going on. So I'm going to ask him to step forward a few steps, get back into camera frame, and just take a moment to breathe. And then I'm going to try and ask him to do the exact same thing yet again. So here we are. I start to apply that pressure again. Cherokee does start to back up. He kind of starts to move his body around. But what you might see right here is just barely he moves over with his front end. I'll show you all again. I immediately release that pressure and give Cherokee a moment to relax. Just as I was discussing with the hind end, he made a step in the right direction. Now, he didn't do exactly what I wanted him to do because he did move the hind end, but no horse is going to get it right on the first try. So just by him sidestepping, that was better than him trying to back up. So that was a step in the right direction, and I'm going to reward that try with the release of pressure. After lots of time and patience and rewarding every little step in the right direction, eventually I am able to get Cherokee to start sidestepping with that front end and not moving the hind end as much. So, massive progress right there. The final behavior in the prerequisites to starting a horse under saddle is picking up all 4 feet, and I am happy to announce that Cherokee is doing that pretty damn well. Before we close off the session, we're going to work on something a little bit different. There is something out there called the window of tolerance, and basically this means that when you're within that window of tolerance, you're able to function somewhat normally. But once you start exiting that window of tolerance, things start to get a little bit more difficult. You might become more stressed, you may be unable to perform tasks and function and stuff like that. This goes hand in hand with the discussion of thresholds, and so horses, humans, and other living creatures have what is called a threshold. When they are below that threshold, that means they are calm, they are content, and they are okay with what is going on. When they are over that threshold, that means that they are shutting down, they are scared, they're anxious, they've entered the fight, flight, or freeze response, and this can eventually escalate into flooding, which is where the horse or the human or whatever just completely shuts down. Before I end off the session, I want to kind of test Cherokee's window of tolerance, see where his threshold may lie. What I've kind of observed that pretty much everything I have thrown at Cherokee, he's definitely unsure about it, or it seems as if he doesn't know what I'm asking, but the only thing that has really made him feel the need to explode is the lunge whip, and that is something we've already made progress with. Since today's session was absolutely phenomenal, I figured why not try and see how he would feel about me sitting on his back. And so just like with everything else, I want to do this very slowly. I want to take my time, and I want to pay attention to his body language throughout all of this because I don't want to push him over the threshold to the point where he feels like he needs to run, escape, or fight or any of that stuff. Looking at his body language as I hop around, his head is on the higher side, his ears are focused on me, his lips are tight, and you can definitely tell that he is unsure of what we're doing. However, he is still not exhibiting any signs of him being even close to the threshold. Like, he's not trying to run away from me, he's not trying to move, and he isn't really showing signs of him having shut down either because he is still pretty attentive, right? So you'll see right here, as I go to hop on him yet again, that head does barely rise, and he kind of barely starts to move his hind end. But overall, he's not exhibiting signs that he feels the need to explode, that he is shutting down, or any of that. So I'm going to take him on a walk, take a bit of a breather, and continue to kind of just test my limit and see where exactly his limit is. After lots and lots of jumping and putting weight on his back, he finally shows me a little bit of a reaction. I go to pet his stomach, and he backs up a few steps. Still not a very explosive reaction, but he backs up to be like, whoa, what was that? So I'm going to take a moment, we're going to go on a little bit of a walk, and we're going to relax. After taking a short water break, we pick up where we left off. Cherokee is showing me that his window of tolerance is a lot larger than I thought it was. He's not shutting down, which is something I was kind of afraid of. And the reason I know he's not shutting down is because he's still able to respond to my little movements, like lifting my leg, right? When I do that, he just barely starts to move like he does here. When a horse is shut down, they're just so dull to everything. Like, they're in a different universe. You can do whatever the hell you want with them, and they're not going to have any type of reaction. Cherokee is still in the present moment. Cherokee is still here. Cherokee is still watching everything that I do. Yes, he's absolutely unsure. His head is high, his lips are tight, and he doesn't really know what to think of the whole process, but overall he is doing absolutely phenomenal. The exercise that I'm implementing is what's called the Jeffries method, or what some people even call the human curry comb. And so this method consists of bringing the horse super close to you, scratching him all over the place, jumping up, getting on his back bareback, which is what I'm doing here. I look like a fish out of water and definitely not as graceful as some people out there, but that's okay. And I'm just going to spend a lot of time scratching him like you would with a curry comb, except it's just my hands. I'm giving him lots of love and attention, lots of scratches, and I even reach a point where I can sit up all the way on his back, and I'm just going to continue scratching him, showing him that it's okay. I'm just trying to make this a very positive experience. This is a moment where my treats and my reinforcers would definitely make a huge difference, but unfortunately I don't have those. So just using reinforcers with my fingernails and my scratches is what's going to have to do. Cherokee proceeded to stand there and give me no reaction aside from a step or two, and so overall I've learned that his window of tolerance is way larger than I thought it was, and I'm so fucking proud of him. Before we close off this video, don't forget to go and check out our books. I've got 3 books on the shelf, and they are all on a variety of topics relating to horses. We also have a podcast out there. It is about the life lessons horses have to teach us. And we also have a merch store, so you can go and get some cool fancy merch, sport it, send us a picture of you wearing it, and we'll give you a discount on your next purchase. With that being said, I'd like to give y'all a friendly reminder that all of the pictures and videos, all of the content you see at Wild Child is funded by myself. I like to do this at absolutely no cost to you guys because the world is so expensive right now, and I really just want to help make a better world for the horses we all love so much. However, if you would like to help financially support the sanctuary horses, the materials we need to make and edit these videos, I have a list of different ways that you can donate. I'm not a registered nonprofit. I'm just an LLC trying to make a living, support the animals, and help horses and humans overcome their problems while advocating for kinder, more humane horsemanship methods. With that being said, if you have not already, please hit the red subscribe button. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, our podcast, and all of the many, many other things. things that we have available. Thank y'all for watching. Stay strong, stay true, stay wild, and we'll see y'all next time.